afternoon, everybody. So happy to see you here. And I just want to read what I'm seeing on the screen because I find it so powerful. It says, I am like the moon, alone, full of imperfection, but still trying to shine with a smile. Wow. Wow. What a wonderful quotation. And I think that is how we ought to be, each one of us. Just understanding who we are, understanding the perfections we have, and also understanding that we are not perfect, all of us. And that's why we are here, what we are here to talk about this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining Women on Boards Network. My name is Catherine Musakali, and I'm the chairperson of Women on Boards Network. And always a pleasure to see you here. And thank you. Oh my goodness, I can see a pineapple with sunglasses on it. I feel like grabbing it and eating it. Great. Okay, so this afternoon we are going to speak about a topic that is so close to my heart and a topic that should also be close to your heart. And why do we do these webinars as Women on Boards? It's because we love you as our junior members, and because we know that without you, we have no future. And so we want to invest in our future. We want to invest in you. We want to make sure that you are really the best that you can ever be. And so without wasting too much time, I want to hand over to Eunice, who is going to be our moderator this afternoon. Eunice is a dear friend of mine. Eunice is a member of the Women on Boards Network. Eunice serves on the committees of Women on Boards Network, but her day job, she works for the KCB group. So if anybody is looking for money this afternoon, you know where to get the money because Eunice can give you all that money. And so Eunice, thank you so much, and may I please hand over to you.
Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. Today we have an exciting topic. I think we had sent it out. The topic is on appearance as a tool for self-expression. We have an exciting speaker today, somebody who herself, her appearance is very attractive and she speaks very eloquently. So I'll just give a brief on Wanjiku, Wairia. And Wanjiku considers herself as a kaleidoscope with many a name. Queen of the Pride is her standing title. As she alone, she is world of his. To her brothers, she shakes to her girl tribe. She's Chika. In corporate world, she's Miss Wanjiku. So she carries many titles depending on who she's with. And to her league of little gentlemen, she's just a mom. So she's a mother of sons. This her story of hope, determination, resilience, and service. She's truly lived life. Forward understanding is backwards. Educated by the church, her family lived in Kibera from humble backgrounds, while she schooled at Loreto Convent, Musongari, and all odds seemed stacked up against her. Living below $1 a day meant that school became a haven, where a meal a day and a ticket out of abject poverty was guaranteed. The days accustomed her to early, dark, and sometimes very cold mornings, taking advantage of enveloping silence. She nosed the books before class came alive with a buzz of start of a school day. She always remembers the words of a senior pastor's wife that kept her afloat in that season. Wanjiku, she would say, the only difference between you and the rest of the school is where you lay your head. Stand tall and bury your head in books. This is the season that will pass very quickly. These words reigned true when she got her first expatriate role at 24 years, coordinating with UN agencies to deliver hope in essential services to the war-torn country of South Sudan. Their unwavering belief shattered her glass ceiling, embedding significance in her service to humanity. Today, Wanjiku color the world with life. With over 21 years of global experience, Wanjiku is a seasoned entrepreneur, a respected influencer, a passionate social impact advocate with creative, agile eye for all matters leadership. Wanjiku serves as a Chief Visionary Officer at Sweli Group Limited, where she has supported more than 40 multidisciplinary and multicultural teams in re-engineering their strategy, execution, and leadership ethos. She is a member of Women on Boards Network and challenges the status quo on boards while propelling business leaders to drive productivity, diversity, and inclusion to deliver strategic transformation. Her desire to intentionally pay it forward led Wanjiku to Rotary and Toastmasters. Wanjiku, wow, what a profile, and so proud of you for what you've become. And I think for the young people, see where you can get to. It doesn't matter where you come from. Welcome, Wanjiku, to take us through this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eunice, for the very kind introduction. It looks like you almost read everything. Thank you very much. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to meet you virtually, and I do look forward and hopefully a slice of your life with me as well, to everyone on this call. I'm looking forward to enriching engagements, loads and loads and loads of questions. I age one of the things I care. You can't ask all the questions all the time at the same time. Well, today is the one day that you can ask all the questions at the same time. That's my permission to you. I'm looking forward to a very enriching engagement with all of you. There's only one rule in this call. You must agree with me that I'm 21. That's the number I stick to. So we're not at any other age. I'm 21 and we're going to stick to it. But going forward, feel free to type questions in the chat. We'll pick them up. But even if you have a burning question, I know growing up as one of those kids, like there's always a burning question. Just put up your hand or, just unmute yourself and ask. This is one session I say you can ask me anything apart from questioning my 21 years of age. Anything else you're free to ask. And I look forward to really, really just having a very good time. Now, have you ever wondered why is it that some people are known for certain things and other people seem not to be known for anything at all? Well, this is very interesting. My life has had many turns, as you have heard, and they've taken me sometimes some very dark and very slippery, difficult paths. And I learned that the art of self-expression is the one thing that will help me navigate life. I don't know whether you're like me. The word potential, I have heard the word potential over and over and over again growing up. Like, Wanjiku, you have great potential. There's nothing that you cannot achieve if you put your heart to it. And this one of the things that eventually got to sink in me was that I quickly understood that my attitude determined my altitude. And whereas that was true and that has driven me over the years, the other thing that has remained true is that something in between the attitude and the altitude is something called aptitude. And this is when I learned that I must learn how to educate my gifts and my talents. And it's in my gifts and my talents that I'm able to express myself and be able to have people sit up and listen to what I have to say and begin to understand who I am. And for me to be able to accept the fact that it's okay, I can be different, and different is also great. Then begs a real question. So what does self-expression really, really, really mean? Do you ever wonder or just stop to ask yourself how you share yourself with others? There's who we believe we are and who we know we are, but how do we share who we are with the people who are around us, whether they are friends, whether they are neighbors, whether they are schoolmates, whether they are teachers, parents. For those of us who are blessed to have people to come and assist us at home or drive us to where we need to go, how do we share ourselves with them? And because we're all unique, all of us have different preferences of the things we like and things that we do not like. And I look back at my life and I realize that if someone had not given me the permission to accept myself and then express myself and express myself with boundaries that are safe with me, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. Now, we all have our unique traits and talents and our own quirks, not preferences and our differences. But this does not make you necessarily separate from everybody else. Being different is good. Being unique is great. But what does that really mean? When we talk about self-expression, it's how people experience us. When we talk about your friends and your families, how do they experience you? How do you experience yourself on a day-to-day basis? Now, an interesting thing when I was preparing for this talk is I came to actually realize that a long time ago, some of the things that I learned still hold true. For example, when you walk into a room, who shows up? Is it the person that you are? Or is it the person that you hope you are? Or is it the person that people tell you are? Who shows up into a room? Let's give an example. Presuming we didn't have the COVID scenario and you were invited to a party. Who would wake up and dress that day? How would you dress? Would you dress as the way you feel that this is how I'm most comfortable? Or would you dress in the way that you think people would prefer you to dress? Or would you dress in the way that you hope people will see you? So who shows up? And this comes back down to the core of really what creating impressions is about. When you talk about expressions, it's a combination of how we experience your meaning, what we see, what we hear, and the energy you bring into a room. So a good example, when we walk into a room, we make an expression every single time, an impression, whether you like it or not. Whether you want to be the quiet one in the corner, we will notice you're the quiet one in the corner. And judgments are made quickly. And people are well-meaning. They're very, very well-meaning. Everyone around is very well-meaning. When we say, Wanjiku is a burst of color, they mean well when they say I'm a burst of color, because truly I am a burst of color. But if I am not comfortable with being a burst of color, then that can affect how I view myself. And that can begin to change who I am. First impressions are formed within the first minute or two when you walk into a space, so when you interact with people. And usually these are the most powerful. People will always remember how they interact with you the very first time that they do. When we talk about appearance, we notice about what you're wearing, but we also notice your body language. Are you smiling? Are your shoulders tipped over? Are your shoulders pinned back? Are you looking down? Are you looking at us at the top of your eyes like I'm doing right now? How do we experience you? We also notice how groomed you are. Is your hair done? Is your clothes ironed? That whole experience is part of who we experience. The way we speak as well. Now, this has got nothing to do with your born tone of voice. All of us have our born tone of voice. Some of us have deep voices. Some of us have high voices. Some of us have shrill voices. Some of us have very deep voices. Some of us have very soft voices. That's not what I'm talking about. It is in the how we express ourselves. Because we say it is out of it's of how you say things is how we experience you. So when you come and you're very timid, we're not too sure whether it is us who is making you timid or you're timid. Now, there's nothing wrong with being quiet. But when you have fear in your voice, we hear it. When there's confidence in your voice, we hear it. Now, this doesn't mean that you walk in a room and you just cause chaos and you're the loudest in the room. And if that's who you are, that's okay. Please don't change it. Don't change that if that's who you are. But again, at the end of the day, are you dialing down your voice so that we either don't notice you or because you've been told you're too much of something. I'm hoping I'll have a minute or two at the end, Eunice, to talk about being too this, being too that, or being too much of something, because that's something I'm very passionate about.
Okay.
Because when we walk into the space where you want to grow into a leader, that is one conversation we must have. Must we, what is being too much or something? You're too tall, you're too quiet, you're too loud, you're too soft. I'm really going to put a pin on that one and hope that we can get back to it at some point, Eunice, as we continue. Now,
Okay.
again, there are those of us who are uniquely polite. Thank you very, I have permission from Eunice, so I'll catch you guys on the too much story a little bit later. So there are those of us who are generally, normally quiet, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that we should never hear your voice. This is what I've learned over the years of doing what I do. I work with leaders every day, and I work with growing young leaders as well, and identifying talent. Some as early as high school, others we do it in campus, others within organization, and that's what we call emerging talent. I'm privileged to do this particular kind of work with different organizations. And the one thing I've always found out is sometimes the seemingly quiet ones tend to have quite a bit to offer us. And because we probably are so loud around them, we do not sometimes get to hear what they have to say. Then I also do know there's a flip side of this, where the very expressive ones also, we get to feel that, we're saying too much, so we want to keep quiet, or we don't feel that we get heard. And that means we need to slow down and listen to what you have to say. Now, all these are part of your verbal messaging, and all this is in part of your words. Now, is there a way you can nurture this to ensure that who you are is experienced every day? Absolutely, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. There's also about your nonverbal cues as well. There's when you sit and you cross your hands and you have your brow frown like this, then we probably can know you're not in agreement with us. And we may think we are hiding our emotion, but I will just give an example that comes to mind, which I remember what my mother used to say a long time ago. When we were younger, we used to be bought for the spectacles that were much longer than our dresses. And what that meant was that we kind of had to pull it up. But if you didn't do it right, when you turned the corner, it would always show. And that's what happens with our verbal language. That what you're feeling and that which you're experiencing, as much as you try to hide it, we see it and we feel it. We may not be able to name it, but we see it and we feel it. The other thing is eye contact. A lot of us from the different cultures, we do know that it is, we have been told that it is inappropriate to look at people straight in the eye. Well, this is what I want to say about eye contact. The singular most impactful engagement point is within the eyes. And apart from those of us who have to wear lenses because of, maybe reading and because of light or because of the environments we find ourselves in, at the end of the day, eye contact is a singular, most powerful point of contact you can have anyone. This doesn't mean that you bore them down in their face and to their eyes. Is that when you're paying attention to somebody, they can see it in your eyes. When you have something to say to somebody, they will see it in your eyes. When you're sad, they will see it in your eyes. When you're happy, they will see it in your eyes. When you have a quizzical look like, I'm not sure I agree with that, they will see it in your eyes. When you have a question or a comment or are waiting for an opportunity to just get your word in, they will see it in your eyes. Now, this is something that you can choose to practice over a period of time in terms of the how you do it, but over and over and over again. Right from my very first experience of being told that, we don't know how you're going to go to school, so let's see how the year starts, to the point where the church called my mom, told her, we're going to offer us your daughter a scholarship. If she can get into the school, it doesn't matter how much it will cost, it will pay that joy. And meeting Sister Pauline, who was the headmistress of Rachel Convent in Sangari then, the very first time, I remember, I will never forget her words. She said, Miss Wanjiku, look up, look at me, tell me, do you want to join my school? And that was her question. And of course, my voice shaking like, a leaf in the middle of a storm, I mumbled a yes. And she said, if you want to join us, we're happy to have you. And that was the first time that I realized the importance of looking at somebody in the eye and talking to them. The other thing is your facial expressions. They reflect what's in your mind. Whether your brow is creased, or you're looking up, or you're having a hard day, we see it all in the expressions on your face. The other thing is in your posture. Are you feeling beat down? And we all have those days, by the way. So let me not lie to you. I've had my ups and I have my downs. I have my days when I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe I should just put off my phone for just a day and just take a breather. All of us have ups and downs, because that's what life is. It's a series of ups and downs, and the ups and downs are what builds us. That is actually what life is. It's a collection of seasons and different times and spaces and different experiences. That's what life is. But when you're aware of where you are and what you want to express, your posture is most important. Now, I do know, I don't know whether there's anybody on the call who loves movies like me, who's a couch potato like me, but Netflix and chill is something I absolutely love whenever I get any opportunity. And what that does, sometimes because you're so relaxed, sometimes we tend to slouch. Now, this feels comfortable. And so we may always tend to sit with our shoulders slouched in. But when I look at you, how I experience you with slouched shoulders, it tells me you're not confident, you're unsure, you're not sure whether you want to be in the same space with me. And I need to figure out whether you want to connect with me. That's what slouched shoulders say. Again, crossing of arms, I talked a bit about that. And also distance in terms of how far or how close we sit. What does that mean? There is social distancing, which is currently being encouraged by the Ministry of Health because of COVID-19. However, there is also what we call social distances, and I would like to talk about this like barriers. Like in our rooms, when you get into a home, there's either, depending, maybe there's a gate and there's a main door, then there's a sitting room where everyone is welcome. And then the other places like the kitchen that very few people are welcome. Then there's the bedroom and a few more people are welcome. Then there's a washroom, or the place where we do our grooming, where you prefer to have it by yourself. So that's the same way our boundaries and distances are. So depending on how we interact with different people in those spaces, in the different distances we are in, it begins to be able to help us see how we express ourselves differently. The people who we are more open about, and those should be your people who you're most closest to. Am I saying that we should not engage with people around us? No. All I'm saying is that based on distance, there's certain things that we say to certain people and others that we don't. Now, I talked about the accuracy of first impressions. This affects how people judge us, and it can be very misleading. You mentioned I'm a member of Rotary Club of Rotary. I'm a member of Rotary Club of Langata, a 9-year member actually at that. And I got to hang out with one of our not so old, not so new members about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Currently, my role is Director of Family of Rotary. So what I aim to do is to connect with every member of the club. We are 112, so we are very many. And I'm not sure I'll be able to do a very good job in finishing this task. I aim to meet at least one member a week physically, just to catch up with them. So I was meeting with this particular member, and they had something very interesting to say. They said, Wanjiku, I know you're warm, but I didn't know that you were so open and I could engage so freely with you. And I remember asking them, okay, so what came to mind? It's like, when I first saw you, you looked very put together, and I must really organize my words before I speak to you. Now, that was their first impression. And they had been in the club for almost, 2-3 years. So you can imagine my trying to backtrack and say, no, that's not who I am. But what did that tell me? That told me that is exactly how this particular member experienced me for the first time. Now, yes, first impressions can be misleading, but more than not, sometimes you get an opportunity to correct them, other times you don't. And that's why we must pay closer attention. So now I'm more aware when I'm in my social impact spaces in terms of how I interact. Why? Because I spend a lot of time in the business space. So for you, How do you want your friends to experience you? How do you want your neighbors to experience you? I know at this time is when we are, feel we are quite grown up. Our parents don't think we are quite grown up. So there seems to be a tussle. There are decisions you want to make, and you're saying, mom, dad, I'm not a child anymore. I want to make my decisions. It's like, okay, how about we determine how we want our parents to experience us so that they can give us a little bit more room to make those decisions. The other thing also is based on how we dress. Now, this is one controversial one because depending on our value system and the environment we find ourselves in and what we're doing and who we're hanging out with, dressing then communicates a lot. Does it mean you have to dress the same every single time? Absolutely no. How do you want people to experience you? So if you are going to church, for example, or you're going to a religious institution, how do you want the people in that religious environment to experience you? If you're going out for a party, how do you want to be perceived? If you're going out just to hang out with your cousins, how do you want to be perceived? If you're going on a long journey, the people who you meet along the way, how do you want them to experience you? Because honestly, the first one I talked was about the eyes, the second one was about your clothes. Your clothes communicate so much more about you and who you are and what you value than anything else you'll ever say. And then what to wear when and how to wear it, the issue is never about the what. It's the where are you wearing it and is it in the right environment? And I'm happy to take many questions around this because I know every time I talk about this, there are loads and loads and loads of questions. Now, I talked about our eyes, I've talked about our dressing, talked about our verbal communication and our nonverbal communication. All this put together bring together the person who we experience as you, that is your personality. What is the unique combination of your mental, emotional, and social qualities? So when you speak, when we hang out with you, what do we experience? What is your attitude? What are your emotions? And I'm not saying that there's a particular one that is right. It's just that on an everyday basis, depending on how you're feeling, it will reflect your attitude. I don't know what we say nowadays, but I know back in our day, there used to be a lot of whatever, and that's basically to say, I've moved on. But somebody else hearing whatever, they're hearing something absolutely totally different. How are you feeling today? Are you having a good day? Are you having a bad day? Are you having a blah day? Are you having a so bored day? I wish I could do something totally different day. What kind of day are you having? And because of the kind of day you're having, what are you communicating to us about your day? So if you're having a bad day, does that mean that everybody else around you needs to have a bad day? And this is a hard thing to say because sometimes you can't even be able to understand the reason why you're so angry about something. And when someone asks you a question, you just snap. Now, that emotion also plays out in our behavior. And our behavior is how people experience us on a day-to-day basis. When all is said and done, there are a lot of things that begin to show up. All right, we talked about our emotions. Did you know that depending on how you're feeling, I can probably be able to tell how you're feeling from how you're dressed? Because most of us will pick our clothes based on how we are feeling. Is it a good day? So I'll pick something that looks like this. If I'm just having one of those not so good day, I will pick up this kind of clothes. Now, colors also play a big role in our self-expression. There are those of us who love bright colors like me. I love, love, love bright colors. There are those of us who love quieter colors, and that's okay. All I am saying is depending on how we are feeling, we continually express ourselves as well through color. Now, there are functions that we are required to wear a certain set of colors. Like if it's a funeral, depending on what part of the world you're coming from or what part of the country you are from. Sometimes we wear white, sometimes we wear dark colors, either your navy blues or your blacks. So that's function related. But on a normal day, the colors that you choose to wear and pick tell us a lot about not only your emotion, but also how you perceive yourself. thoughts that you have about yourself also begin to be expressed in how you interact with you. Are you self-assured? If you're self-assured, it also reflects in your choices. Now, I know we had talked about clothes a little bit earlier, but I'll talk about being self-assured and the way we choose our clothes, and this is in how they fit. The more unsure we are about ourselves, the more baggy and loose and, really just free the clothes. Let me talk about oversized. The more oversized our clothes are. And when we experience you that way, we wonder, I was like, okay, are you having a bad day? What's going on? Is there something that I said, something that I've done that's making you feel uncomfortable? Or are you experiencing something that you're trying to hide? Again, remember there's the colors, but there's also the fitting of what you wear. A negative self-image, how I see myself. Sometimes we have, and that is how life is. Sometimes you have days when we're not so sure about who we are and we're not sure about ourselves. And a lot of these things also show up in our dressing as well. Now, conformity. Being in our teens, we all want to belong. So this seemed to be the cool thing, and we all want to be in the same space. And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to identify with our peers. We want to get along with the current standards. We want to practice the same things, but we must always ask ourselves, in this conformity, in being like everybody else, am I losing who I am? I remember I spent some time with Catherine, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and on some training, and I kept telling her, you know what, I'm going to work very hard to look for a navy blue jacket, because that is something I did not own, because it's a color you'd hardly ever see me in. But in certain environments, it's a color that is acceptable. But you can be sure, as much there was a navy blue jacket, there was a lime green, orange somewhere featuring in my dressing, because that's who I am. So I will conform in this, but I still need to be comfortable. So as you identify with your peers, are you losing yourself? Who are we experiencing? Are you expressing yourself, or are you experiencing who you think everybody else wants to experience? Now, the other thing that comes with this is also an identity and belonging. And of course, it brings a sense of security, being in a group. But you can be part of a group and also be unique in that group. So who are you? What do you want to say about you? Because that's what we're talking about today. Self-expression, and what do you want to say about you? What are those things that you want us to know that this is who you are? It doesn't mean that it will remain the same for the rest of your life. It just means that it keeps improving, it keeps shifting, it keeps changing. We experience different dimensions of it. The other thing that comes with self-expression is peer pressure. Because everybody is doing it, we feel we want to be part of it. Whereas in principle, there's nothing wrong with it. The question is, will you be able to live with yourself? Will you be able to say that, yes, I made the decision to do what everybody else was doing because I wanted to do it? Or is it because my friends were doing it? And I cannot explain to myself halfway through it what happened and the issues that came out. And it could be something as simple as, I need to be home by 6 p.m. Maybe that's what you've agreed as a rule at home. But because my friends were hanging out for 5 minutes longer and I did not want to seem like the uncool one, so I hung out 5 minutes longer and I got home and I was in trouble. And I'm at pains to explain to my parents why I have actually come home past 6 p.m. So there is that side. But there's also some things which are more detrimental. We're not able to get out of them eventually. What does this mean? It could be even getting into habits that have of an addictive nature, and getting out of it becomes very difficult. And all this are tied into self-expression, because if it's cool to behave or to do a certain thing, then we feel that's the best way to express ourselves. Now, a lot of the time with peer pressure, it always seems like being gentle is better than to be strong or to stand. Because of course, when you stand against the crowd, it means you're going to stand alone. And that becomes quite a difficult way to live your life, especially in your teens. But the question is, how do you want us to experience you? Now, in the event you stand up and say, no, I don't think we should do this, or I don't think I want to do this, are we able to handle peer disapproval? If your friends don't think Wanjiku, you're not cool anymore, Are you able to handle that? And if you're not able to handle that, what about it are you not able to handle? I've learned very many lessons along the way. I learned a long time ago. It's never about the what, it's always about the why. It's not that you don't find me cool anymore. Of course, that may not be very easy to handle, but the question is, why don't you find me cool anymore? And if I can be able to answer my question, if that's because I will not take something that I don't think I should take, or I will not do something I don't think I should do, then what that means is at the end of the day, I'm able to stand as an individual. Now, this, I want to say it this way because I live life forward, understanding it backwards. It's a lot of the things that I managed to say no to, or I managed to stand up to, that have helped me become who I am. The world is different. When you come out from the confines of your parents' homes and the confines of school and structure, when you come out into the big wide world, it has a lot of big scary things. And sometimes some of those places you need to stand up, and say no, or, stand up and say what is going on is not right. We need to go this direction. This needs to be done this way. And a lot of times it will mean that you stand up alone. But guess what? We would not have discovered a lot of the things we have discovered today, including what we call electricity, which is we do not know where it comes from and where it goes, if somebody did not stand up and say, you know what, I am going to try 1,000 times to light up a light bulb. And it's the 1,000th time that worked. So they failed so many times. Can you imagine failing at the same thing for 1,000 times until it finally worked? And that person actually stood up for themselves. So this was Edison, and that's his story. And you can go up and read up about Thomas Edison and his story of the light bulb and lighting up the famous treat that he did. But he failed 1,000 times. So sometimes for you to do great things, sometimes you may need to stand alone. And individuality is one of the biggest muscles that you can learn to practice. I was very privileged, as you had in my story from Eunice, because I was educated by the church. And one of the things that I was required to do was to meet the pastor's wife once a week. And this is the one thing she always reminded me, Wanjiku, the only difference between you and the rest of the school is where you laid your head. And that meant that I needed to stand up and say, yes, it's my background environment is different, but I have the same teachers, I have the same books, the exams are the same. Everything else the church had provided was exactly the same. And some days were hard because I was like, no, but how comes they have this and I don't have this? It's like, no, do you need it for school? No. Do you need it to pass exams? No. Then you don't need it, sweetheart. You have everything that you need for this point in time. And the one thing that they kept reminding me every single time is that this too will pass. It's a very small season. And guess what? I look back, of course, we've agreed I'm 21, so we're not going to do the math. Many years later, I'm glad that I was able to go through that when I did. So there are many things that come into play when you talk about being an individual. Now, there's an element of developing your own kind of style. Because if you're aware of who you are and you are secure in who you are, then you can choose what to wear, where to wear it, and how to combine it. We don't have to adopt what somebody else's style is, because then it creates a false image, because half the time we are so uncomfortable because it's not who you are. But again, sometimes we can also dress too old, we can also dress too young, we can dress too extreme. And that's why I come back to, who are you? What are the areas of that makes you so comfortable, that puts your soul when you wear, okay, for me would be my red flower. For you, what is it? What is that thing that when you put on, what is that thing that when you think about, there's nothing that you cannot overcome? So when you put too much emphasis on your external appearance, that sometimes can be a big challenge. What if we chose to put more emphasis on who we are and where we are comfortable? And because of this, everything then begins to be put together, because it is coming from inward, outward. And when we experience you, it's always a consistent pleasure. And on the days you're having a bad day, because you're going to have many of those, as I have promised you, we will always be able to accept and say, it's okay, we're having a bad day. But ultimately, what do we really, really, really want to say about ourselves to the rest of the world? When you walk into a room, when you walk into the supermarket, when you hang out with your cousins and your siblings, what do you want to say to them? What do you want them to leave there, them saying, wow, what is that wow factor that you have? What is that you want to leave behind? And that is what I like to call walking in your stardust, because it doesn't matter which one. And you can never get it wrong, because there's only one you on the whole face of this earth. There has never been, never will there be another you. Because at the end of the day, we, the rest of the world, are depending on you to show up so that we can experience the world as we are meant to experience. Because when you don't experience the real you, then at the end of the day, we experience a counterfeit of you. Now, one of the many questions I'm always asked is, Wanjiku, how do you get around searching the real you? Sometimes there are lots of lows, sometimes it's confusion. One day I think I'm like this, and the other day I think I'm like this. And sometimes I want to do a lot of experimentation. Is that okay? Absolutely. And it's okay that you're having the shifts, because when you have the shifts, it means first and foremost, at least you are interacting with yourself. What does that mean? When you have ups and downs and different variations of who you are and how you see yourself, you begin to get an opportunity to ask yourself, in which way am I most comfortable? In which way am I my real self? And that's how you begin to slowly pull out the same. Now, remember, this is not an event, it's a journey. I am still discovering amazing things about myself, and I'm still refining how I express myself. One of the toughest things to do is receive feedback. And this is something that I wish that I had learned a long time ago. Because when you're told, you know, Wanjiku, I'm not sure I like that dress. That length is I'm a bit concerned. Or your set of friends, you may want to think about your set of friends. And I always felt like there's a sense of control, you know, coming into my space and shrinking it in that sense. But I've learned, of course, living life forward, understanding it backwards, is to say that when you get feedback, any opportunity you have is to reflect on it and to ask yourself, why would that person tell me A, B, C, D? Why would they ask me about that? Why would they raise an issue around this particular thing? And if you have an opportunity to ask them, please do. And when you do, please be open to the feedback that they're going to give you. Now, Eunice, I'd like to get back to you before I go any further. And I'm not sure how we're doing on time as well. We can also plug in a few more questions.
Yeah, it would be good to have questions now. I don't have any now, but maybe we can get have some interactive session. Thank you for that, Wanjiku, and I want to use you as an experiment. I'm very observant, and I've just seen as you're talking. I would like just one or two people to say, based on how Wanjiku is dressed and how she looks, please show us your nails. That's what I noticed. What sort of personality do you think Wanjiku is? Look at her nails, and what sort of personality do you think she is? You can speak out, put up your hands, or put on the chat. Look at her, she has bling, wow. What sort of personality do you think Wanjiku is? Anyone who wants to speak?
I see Chioma has raised her hand.
Appearance. Huh?
I think someone has their hands raised.
Chioma.
I think she's very bold.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
Anyone else? I think she's fun to hang around with. She looks like a bubbly person. Anyone else? I'm going to call people now. Vivika. Vivika? She's run away. Oh, there are quite a number on the chat. Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, they think you're a sanguine. That's from Harriet. Grace says, I think she's very fun and outgoing lady. Karaoke says, a bright personality. Terry says, bright. Arena says fun. Berry says exciting, fun, happy. Kelly says bubbly. Lillian, straightforward. Arena, very exciting to talk to. Edgar, wow, they're coming in fast and furious. Lillian, courageous. Edgar says she has a confident personality. Who else? Confident, Julie, and Chioma, jolly. Wanjiku, does that fit your description based on what you look like?
Absolutely, absolutely. For Harriet, interestingly, yes, I am a sanguine, but that's my secondary personality. So the first one is choleric. I'm a pure red choleric, number one, and then of course a sunny yellow sanguine. Yes, but everything else is absolutely confident. Yes, I speak confidence fluently. Absolutely. Back to you, Eunice.
Excellent. Excellent. So you see, your appearance is very easy to tell what sort of personality you are. And maybe I can start off with a question, which I'm sure many of them have. My daughter is here and she knows. I think sometimes I dress up, and myself, I feel I've dressed very well for where we are going. Maybe we are going to church or going somewhere. Then my parents tell me, go back and dress. How should I react to something like this? Maybe you can speak to that. I can assure you a number of them have had that experience.
All right. Yes. A lot of the times, one of the things that your parents or your caregivers would have a conversation with you about this, especially as let's talk about Sunday morning, is probably they're talking to the decency of your dressing. That would be the core issue around that. So either it is the length of ladies, it's either the length of our dressing. If it's a gent, are we sagging our trousers? Is it fitting? Is it appropriate for church? So it is not so much the what you're wearing, it's the where you're going. That's how you need to express yourself. And a lot of times, because maybe we're even running very late for church, by the time you're going to go back and change. So there's even no time for that conversation of why should I change? And of course, when you come out with the why should I change, it sounds like you're being rude and disrespectful. What I would probably suggest is, yes, probably go back and change, maybe ask what they prefer you to wear, but then probably follow the conversation so that you get to understand why this is actually offensive to your folks and to your parents, because ultimately, because you have them, they probably even bought you those clothes, so that you probably don't even understand why it's a big deal for me to wear it to church, because it's how I like to express myself. But the other thing that would be a big deal as well, it would be the perception that you would create on yourself and how people would experience you in that church environment if you went to church dressed like that. So it is most important to remember that there's how we want to express ourselves, but it's how people experience us. So the environment you're in experiences you differently based on how you're dressed. I hope I've answered that question, Eunice.
Thank you. You have. There's a question from Berry Lyman. Berry, you can ask your question.
Yes, I have a question. My question is simply, how do we train others, or how do we present ourselves in the way that we want to be viewed by others, where certain norms are expected? Like, for instance, food, and ourselves and allow others to accept. Sorry, I'm talking about, is it okay to present yourself the way you'd prefer? Say if your dressing code is normally casual and you're in the workspace, and that's how you want to present yourself, how do you train other people to accept you the way you are?
Okay. Barry, I hope this is a Barry I know. Hey, Barry, if you're the same person. Yes, it is you. Thanks for joining on to the call. So how do you train people to accept who you are? Now, there are two parts to that. There are two part answers to that question. One, there are specific environments where specific would be expected for us to dress in a particular way. For example, we talk about school, the school uniform, and there's how we're supposed to dress. There's the work environment. There's a way you're expected to show up depending on the business code organization of dressing. So those, what I would normally say is the easiest way to navigate that is bring your own style within the confines of that environment. So even though you like to be casual and you're expected to be formal in your environment, there are elements of your dressing that can make you comfortable or casual. For example, you do not always have to wear high shoes, for example, or leather, pointed Italian shoes, for example, to work. You could look for a pair that is very comfortable for you to wear. Now, there are other environments which are not very strict in terms of the code. It could be you're going out, it's a social engagement, you're going out, or you're just hang out with friends. It could be a conference in the evening that you're hanging out. Feel free to express yourself. Though if it is an event that has a dress code, then you need to find a way of expressing yourself within what is comfortable within the dress code. Now, the world is very interesting. The world accepts your consistency. If you're consistent in a particular way that you dress, the world will come around to accept you. Eunice was talking about my nails, and you heard about my work. I spend a lot of time in the corporate space. And it is the one thing that from the beginning that they accepted that's who she is. She's colorful. We've made peace with not only the colors, but the length of her nails. That's it. Everything else about me is corporate. There's my crew cut artifacts when the times I try and work around it, and they're like, no, let's go back to the person we're used to. But at the beginning, for some people, it takes them aback because they're like, are you sure you're corporate? And how do you want to engage with you? But then when they engage you, then that stereotype begins to shift. And that is why you must be comfortable in who you are, because then the people that experience me in the way that they do. Now, there are many ways to be able to make the world get comfortable with who you are. And in those ways is first and foremost in the consistency in how you speak, consistency in how you connect with people. And I do know you've probably talked about this, the emotional intelligence, how you manage and control your emotion as well. Just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean the world must burn as well because you're having a bad day. But it also means that it is okay for you to ask us to give you some space because you need time to deal with whatever it is that's going on. Or you may want to reach out to somebody to help you deal with the challenge that you're facing. So the issue of training is purely based on one thing, Barry, it's consistency. If you're consistent in how people experience you, then going forward, they will begin to even explain you ahead of you. So that's also that a lot of the experiences that I have, a lot of the words that I've seen described here in the chat, are a lot of the words I get described as. So, and what does that mean? It means that even as I'm being referred to go and do business, like, oh, she's brilliant, she's bright, she's got beautiful nails, but she's also the best person you can work with. So they're already expecting, colorful nails. Then I show up in a not so bright outfit and they're like, Wanjiku, we were told you wear orange and red on. It's like, oh, really? Did somebody really say that? But what has happened is that the world around me has accepted me. And I also do acknowledge that there are those who are very uncomfortable with the bright colors because of the industry that they're in. And I dignify and respect that. So yes, I will have maybe my one jacket, which I promised Catherine I will get, which I now have, which is navy blue, but it is bound to have a red and an orange undertone somewhere that again reflects who I am.
Thank you for
Back
that,
to you.
Wanjiku.
Thank you.
There's a question from Chioma. Chioma, you can speak.
Okay, so both of us have a question, but Shema will go first.
All
What
right.
happens if you can't afford the clothes that express you best?
And the second one?
Okay, can I start with that one first? All right.
Let-
Back to you, Eunice.
Oh, and the second one, they had two questions.
How do you dress the way you express yourself when there's, let's say, a dress code of black, but you like wearing orange, yellow, bright colors? How do you end up also following the dress code, but expressing yourself as well?
All right, amazing questions. Thank you very much. Let me take the first one. How do you dress to express yourself if you cannot afford it? Well, this is my personal experience, so I will. That's the lessons that I have, so I will share that. For me, growing up, new clothes was something that was unheard of, off the shelf. So I learned very quickly to be able to source the cheapest, best quality that I can find. So for me, secondhand worked best, and I always looked for the best secondhand I could find that could express me within my budget so that I could be comfortable with what I have. Then there's also the things of labels as well, which I am acutely aware of as well. When at the end of the day, you find that there are certain labels you'd love to wear and you may not be able to afford them now. So what I say is that I like to pin those in my vision board, that one day I want to wear a Louis Vuitton shoe. I probably can't afford it now, but it's something that I'd want to do. But is there a style that's closer to that I can be able to find, I can be able to afford, that I'll be able to be comfortable in? Then yes, that's also how that happens. Now, in self-expression, one of the things that I didn't talk about here was vision boards. A lot of the things that I've managed to achieve across my lifespan are things that I have pinned on my vision board. Things that I want to see, things I'd love to achieve, things that I hope to do, places I hope to visit, people I hope to meet, experiences that I'd hope to have. A lot of them have happened because I've put them on a vision board. And what does that mean? Putting something on a vision board means picking out what that dream is and putting it, you can even put it on a physical board and say, no, one day this is what I want to achieve. This is what I'm driving towards. This is what I'm looking to experience. And when the time comes, I'm sure I will be able to achieve it. The interesting things about vision boards is very simple. The world conspires to deliver it for you. I remember one of the things that I'd always wanted to do was not only travel the world, which I have had the privilege of doing, but to travel on one of the most expensive and exquisite airlines across the globe. And thankfully, it's because of work, actually, the Kenyan government work that made me and helped me get there. I did manage to meet Richard Branson and fly Virgin Atlantic and experience the whole world of Virgin because of serving my country. So it is something I would never have been able to do on my own, but because it is something that I had always put aside, I'd always wanted to meet Richard Branson, and I did get to meet him, not only in the UK, but even when he came to Kenya, I did manage to, and I also experienced the services under his brand. So that's the other thing that I'd want to say about things that seem out of reach in general, and things that you wonder whether I'll be ever able to afford and or achieve. The other question about the dress code, and I love that example, black, which is something I do not own, but it's something that, that's how we're required to show up. I have learned to put accents in my dress code. So if it's black and that's how we must dress in black, fair enough. Either I'll have, an orange something on my hair or a band with something orange on it. My pants will be orange, or I'll have a little flower that's orange. So I always find a way to just bring the who I am into the same environment, but still respecting the boundaries of the dress code that has been given. So that's who I am. And that's how I have navigated. I hope I have answered your question. I hope
you
so.
have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
We are running out of time, but I must give our young gentleman an opportunity. There is Conrad Modibo and Kefa who have questions. So those will take the last questions and then we'll have to wrap up. So Kefa, you can go first, then Conrad. Okay, let me read Kefa's question. You said the
Sure.
first impression lasts and we should endeavor to present accurate first impressions. How does a gentleman dress for first interaction business meeting with prospective customer, corporate leaders? Okay, that one is for somebody who is working. Then Conrad, ask your question, then she can take those two questions, and any other questions we can post, we'll answer them. Conrad?
Okay, I think Conrad has posted it in the chat as well. Would you mind to read it as
Oh,
to say
yes,
it out?
posted, yeah. I've got a question as well. It might be off topic, but when you say accepting who you are, what does that mean exactly? I understand that over time you'll come to identify yourself according to the people around you, from your job to home. But what if you never actually notice who you are isn't actually what you feel like on the side? What if you just acknowledged what everyone thinks about you and you've forgotten what is that makes you yourself in the first place? Just think about it for a bit. I know it might be a fool's thinking, but it's interesting nonetheless, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, you're dressing for other people, not for yourself.
All right, let me start with Kefa's question. First impressions for a gentleman in the workplace. All right. Kefa, for you, I must say this is probably the easiest question to answer because I'm alone in a world of he. So my world is surrounded by men. So I don't have a sister. I only have boys in my house. So this is pretty something that's quite down my alley. The second reason why this is quite an important and important question to answer is because, especially if you're going into the workplace, the first things first for a gentleman, and let me talk to all the gentlemen on the call, fitting is everything. If something fits you right, then it always positions you as confident. Now, let me talk from the top to top. Whether you're going to wear a shirt and a tie, or you're going to wear just a shirt and a pair of pants, corner to corner, shoulder to shoulder, anything longer than that looks frumpy. So two things, either have it taken in or look for something that fits. The other thing would be also what you'd call your collar button right here, your collar. If it's too tight, it seems like you were not ready for the meeting. If it's too loose, it seems like you're also not ready for the meeting. So would the option be to unbutton it at the top? Probably, but if you really do want to make a good impression, always make sure that you are squarely fit in what you wear. The same thing applies to your jacket. The same thing applies to your sleeves. Now, let me just remove this for a minute. You see this little bone here on your wrist? Your shirt should never go past that. Anytime your hands are down, it should never go past that, because that's the ideal fitting point for your shirt. The other thing that would be the ideally, depending on your body frame, whether you're a slim frame or you're a wide frame, find a shirt that fits, in the sense that you don't have to keep feeling like you need to pull it together or you need to keep trying tucking it in. So make sure it's long enough so when you tuck it in, it fits. Let me talk about the trousers first before I talk to the belt. Your trouser should basically just play very lightly on your shoe. If it bends too much or it folds too much at the bottom, that trouser is too big, and we're not too sure whether you know exactly how to fit yourself together. Depending on the fashion and where you're going, I'm not going to go into pleats and everything else, but always make sure that when you tie in your belt, try and get a singular color belt. The darker the color, the better. The less shiny the buckle, the better. So what does that mean? You will always have your fancy things for when you hang out, but for work and you're going for a corporate meeting and you're meeting a prospective employer and or somebody who you want to make a good impression on, please make sure that the first thing we don't notice is your belt. We should notice it because it's a good quality belt, but not because of how exotic it is or how colorful it is. The other thing would be your socks. try and make sure you have a plain colored socks. I know happy socks are in, and I have nothing against happy socks. But if you're going in for a prospective meeting, try and keep the color quiet, try and keep it down as much as possible. The other thing would be your shoe. It's never about the quality of the shoe. The question is it well polished? If it's well polished, it's well taken care of, then that's something that you can wear. Now, once you have that part fixed, the next thing is your body language. Shoulders back will get you into whichever room you choose every single time. Always think like you have a book on top of your head when you're seated. So that will force you to arch up and try and balance it. And that means even your chin and your eye contact that we talked about earlier, you'll be able to connect with your audience as well. So all this put together and hoping that you have prepared well will now come together and be something that you'll be able to present yourself excellently well. The last thing that I cannot overemphasize is grooming. A decent haircut and clipped nails. Please, gentlemen, please let's not have long nails. Clip them, keep them short, keep them scrubbed, keep them clean. Remember, it's not about which soap you used to wash them with or whether you had a manicure or not. It's about making sure you keep them clipped, because clean nails, gentleman, is a hallmark of a gentleman. And once you have all that put together, then you present yourself, even if the interview doesn't go the way you had planned, I trust me that they will remember you. They will remember how you presented yourself and how you articulated yourself. Grooming, we can never take that away from that. I hope I've answered your question, Kefa. Conrad, now accepting who you are, as well as let me just have a quick look at it, and how you feel and how you present yourself and how you feel about yourself. What do I want to say about this? This is a common challenge, especially when you're in your teens, because who you present yourself to be is often usually informed by those who are around you. So does that mean all the people that I interacted along my life did not influence or impact me in one way or the other? Of course they did. But that did not take away from who I am. They added on too. And that is why accepting who you are is important. The one question I would, and maybe it's a conversation we can have at a different date, Eunice and Catherine and Hannah and the call and WBN, is what happens when who you are inside conflicts with the person that shows up every day. And that's a big conversation, because what that does, it creates a sense of internal conflict that's very difficult to manage. And it gets more complicated in the adulthood, because we expect that in your teenage, you should have fixed this by then. You should have figured this out in your teens. Now, the fact that you're aware that there's a possible conflict around it is an excellent place to start, because you're acutely aware as well. Now, the other thing becomes that also gets happened is that when we are unsure, sometimes we attach labels to our statements. Like, for example, what you said, false thinking. But as I said earlier, there's no question that you cannot ask me. In fact, maybe Catherine should have, and Hannah and Eunice should have labeled this, ask me anything by Wanjiku. There's nothing you cannot ask me. Because I believe, been there, done that, gone 100 miles and back in many different kinds of shoes. And the fact that you are aware that there's a conflict in who you are and who shows up, and you're not even aware that you're showing up as somebody else, I think that's a bigger conversation, which I would request, Conrad, if you would indulge me for us to put a pin on this, and probably we can take it offline, because we can probably take another whole half hour discussing this. I don't know, Eunice, what's your take? Conrad, I don't know what you think. Is that acceptable? And Kefa, you're very welcome. I've seen your chat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Wanjiku. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I would want to encourage all of you to join the junior membership. We've put the link on the chat. Please join and welcome. You'll meet Wanjiku there, Catherine, myself, and many others who are willing to come and just mentor you. Then I think for take home, I think the key thing, please go home and answer this question. Who am I? Yeah. What do you want the world to see you as when they see you, when your first appearance, your body language? Please stand up for yourself. You might be the change that the world is looking for. Don't fall into the peer pressure. I think that is and we thank you so much for taking us through this session. We look forward to many more sessions with you. I thank the women on boards. Catherine, thank you so much for putting this together. I thank the guys in the background, Kantai, Hannah, and Agnes. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you next time. So have a blessed evening and see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye.